Good morning, boys and girls. Audio today. I'd like to bring your attention to another chapter's up on YouTube. This one called Awakening by Light. And this book in the Avatamsaka or the Flower Ornament Sutra gets better as you go into it. And the second half is really amazing. So I commend it to you. Questions?
I wanted to talk about a thing we discussed a couple of weeks ago, which was basically I was talking about my obsessive nature to do everything perfectly and me wanting to avoid making any mistake that used to cause me this obsession. And then you mentioned that uh, like maybe I should look at my life and see how much mistakes I made and how much things I was able to do perfectly. And as I look back at my life, it seemed to me that whatever I thought I was doing perfectly had negative side effects too, and whatever I did as a mistake had positive side effects too. So essentially, I was not able to figure out whether whatever I did was a mistake or something I did right.
That's correct. Okay, so no matter how we look at something, we're only looking at a tiny little slice of it. That's just the way things are for humans. And as we get further in time, away in time, we can see how everything kind of fits together and in a way unfolds in a manner in which we can't really second guess. And so that takes some of the pressure off as long as our intentions are in the right place, or or we're facing the right direction. But the world is just too complex and interdependent. There's too many causes, conditions, and circumstances that are way beyond our control, that all we can do is really guide our life according to our deepest values. And after that, we have to let go.
Hmm. Yeah.
It's just logically a fallacy. And you know the story, the Chinese man who was told that his son had been called away to war, and that was bad. And then he was told that his son had fallen off a horse, and that was bad. And then he'd broken his leg, and that was bad. And it turns out that they had to fight another battle where everybody was massacred, but his son was left behind because he had a broken leg. And so all those things that were bad turned out to be good because it saved his son's life and things like that. You're familiar with those kinds of stories, right? They're very common in Zen.
Yeah, when I read that story, like I remember when I read that story, to me it seemed that that the story is hinting towards like God having a bigger plan, things like that. But I was not able to get behind the idea that God is controlling everything so minutely to make things work out for people.
It's actually, now that I recall it, it was a Sufi story, not a Zen story.
Yeah.
Although Zen also has similar stories. Yeah, the way that I think Jesus put it was not a leaf turns, but that God does not know. All right, so all of this is intricately put together, like as in the net of Indra.
Hmm.
And so at one scale, which is what seems enormous, at another scale is not enormous at all. Everything depends on where we want to look. So the universe appears big. It appears unspeakably, unbelievably, and unfathomably uh, big from the perspective of the human being or the planet Earth. But we appear astronomically large in the same manner from the perspective of the Planck length, or from the perspective of a molecule or a virus or something like that. And so everything is dependent on how from where we look at it and how we look at it. And frankly, we're not able to know comprehensively much of anything, frankly,
Hmm.
except the bigger questions, right?
Hmm. I mean, if
We
I
know only in part. We know only in part.
Mm-hmm. I mean, like if I look at things like from a bigger perspective, like if I take myself out of the equation, then things seem to make sense. That also there was a recent story I read, recent Sufi story I read, where I think there was a dervish who told a guy who used to be angry all the time to go and stand under a tree and serve water to anyone passing by. So he used to do that, and then one time a guy came in who didn't acknowledge him, who didn't took the water. So the guy got angry and he shot him and killed that guy. And then later it turned out that the guy who was killed was a murderer. And then the essence of the story was that the dervish, like these like spiritual masters, they don't work for people but for truth.
Exactly. Very good. So if one values truth, if one intends towards knowing truth, or or God or beauty or reality or whatever, then that's what knock and you shall receive.
Mm-hmm.
That's what unfolds.
Mm-hmm. And in that
And so, go
yeah.
ahead.
Yeah, and in that context, it seemed to me that truth for that story was like the what's good for humanity, not for the person, just the person, like the person who was angry or the person who was killed, but for humanity, what's good. That's what uh, masters or like spiritual masters serve.
Okay, but you let me take it a step further,
Mm-hmm.
because I think you're ready for that, and that is that what we understand is good for humanity or bad for humanity
Mm-hmm.
is not what's good or what's bad. In reality, there is no good or bad. There's only thinking or a perspective that makes it one way or the other.
Mm-hmm.
So even the murderer, and I'm not a moral relativist, and I'm not, we must stick to the highest morality that we know. But even the murderer in your story had a role to play in the cosmos, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so this notion of good and bad, that we can know what's good and what's bad, is something that is that eventually, hopefully, in the pursuit of truth, we drop that, because uh, in reality, there is not such a thing. I mean, if there's Ruby said it very famously, the poet Ruby, the Sufi Ruby.
Mm-hmm.
There's a field beyond good and bad. Meet me there.
Mm-hmm.
And so, good and bad is a human judgment.
Mm-hmm.
And if you just, and one of the things about telescoping your viewpoint, either in or out, is that you see that what appears good or bad at one level is something else at another level.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a folk saying that goes along with that, which is, it goes like, it's an ill wind that doesn't blow someone uh, some good. It's just that you see that dichotomy, that dualism between good and bad, is one that's very, very useful for most of our life, right? But then we reach a point in understanding where we have to transcend that. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't mean we go out and do wanton things, or we do things that are obviously destructive. Mm-hmm. But we understand that both creation and destruction are part of the cosmos. And so good and bad are not applicable terms, I guess. But I hesitate to say this in public, because, I mean, it takes a very mature person to understand what I'm saying and apply it correctly. Okay.
Yeah. So when I look
So
at
it goes like, there's a field beyond good and bad. Meet me there.
Yeah.
I'll probably tweet that out, see how it goes over. People like Ruby, they respect him. Anything he says, they think is good. So go ahead.
Yeah, so when I look at like at a personal level, there I can definitely see that there is not enough knowledge. Like there's not enough people don't know enough to know what is good and bad. So that's understandable. When I look at even like a so like when I take a step back and look at higher levels, like let's look at humanity. There also, if I am judging from my perspective, like just a person's perspective, then again the same limitation applies. So again the same good and bad can't be figured out. But if I look at just like at humanity level, for example, like if I look at wars or like let's say genocides that happened in the past, those just by common sense, and also because how much like in Avatam Saka, how much stress is on alleviating suffering of people. So those kind of actions outright seems like bad.
Well, if you look at the suffering of people, it's generally caused by, I mean, it's invariably caused by ignorance, right?
Yeah.
So in the bodhisattva way of life, one tries to minimize ignorance.
Hmm.
And if people do better, they would do better, but they don't know better. See, that's the problem.
Hmm.
And so, I mean, as a practical matter, as you're going around the world, there's nothing wrong with thinking, oh, this is good, this is bad. I mean, free speech is good, tyranny is bad, or whatever. That life, certainly life is good, and non-life is. See, it just all falls apart. Better to just get beyond that way of thinking. Try and understand rather than judge. I mean, a scientist, for example, doesn't look at terms of things of good and bad, and so he wants to know what's there, right?
Yeah.
And the same thing with philosophers. And this is the pursuit of truth that we're talking about now here, not raising children or conducting a just and moral society.
Yeah.
So it's another level of abstraction.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. But yeah, like so I want to talk about the consequence of that in my life. So basically, since that day, what has happened that so like once I looked at my life, that the decisions I took in the past, I could have taken different decisions and could have arrived at a better situation or a worse situation. I can't tell, but I could have taken other decisions as well. So now what happens that whenever something comes up, I basically do based on what is logically like what logically seems correct to me or whatever my temperament is, but I don't think too much about it automatically. It like automatically a thought arises which is let's do this and we'll see what happens. And then mind
Okay, that's fair. I mean,
yeah, and then mind but the difference is earlier mind used to obsessively think about it even after deciding, and now mind doesn't think about it anymore automatically.
Good. So that sets you free a bit, right?
Yeah.
So there's one other thing, one other word you use that I think bears looking at, and that is the word perfection. Let me tell you a Sufi story about perfection, and then we'll make some generalizations from there. A man once asked the Sufi, a full-blown Sufi, for a celestial, for a perfect apple, right? A celestial apple. No, just a perfect apple. Sorry, I'm screwing up the stories. I tend to do. These things are so carefully put together. And the Sufi hands him a beautiful apple. I mean, it's got like it's bright red, it's nice and fleshy, it's just right, it's ripe, and so on and so forth. And the man's thrilled by it. He's turning it around in his hand. And then he sees a worm hole in it, right? There's a worm in it. And he goes, whoa, wait a minute, what are you talking about? This apple is, it's got a wormhole in it. And to which the Sufi replies, yes, that is a perfect apple. But you asked for an apple on this earth. And even a perfect apple, a celestial apple, as it comes to the earth, right, as it appears on the earth, partakes of the earth. And on the earth, there is no perfection like you're imagining,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, I butchered it. Maybe you can find it sometime and read it to the audience or something. But perfection such as that is not something that exists on this planet.
Mm-hmm.
Think about it. There is no perfect circle. There is no perfect square. There is no perfect anything on this terrestrial plane. That's the nature of this earth, right? It's just the fact of this earth. And so to try and hold yourself to perfection is going to not only slow you down, but also mess you up. Unless you can name some perfection on this earth, I can't think of any.
Yeah.
So unburden yourself from that idea as well.
Yeah, and I have seen unintended like consequences of going for perfection. They also have
Absolutely.
side effects.
It's not part of this earth.
Yeah.
It's not part of this terrestrial realm.
Like, what is not part of this realm?
Perfection.
Yeah. I mean, at least it seems so.
Well, find an exception.
So in Sufi books, sometimes they talk about like perfect, complete enlightenment, like for the masters. And the way they talk about it, they say like it's like someone who is attuned to God or attuned to the higher power all the time.
I think they speak of perfected masters.
Yeah, perfected masters. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, well, to the extent they're of this realm, they are not perfect. To the extent they're not of this realm, they may or may not be. There are more realms accessible to us than just this, what we call the terrestrial.
Are you talking about like those astral realms kind of thing?
No. I'm not talking about that. Just on a scientific basis, if you science has to look behind the surface, right? Because of quantum mechanics. And neuroscience has to look beyond the apparent because of neuroscience, right? So we know that appearance is not the thing. And so what I'm calling terrestrial is the appearance of the world. But there's the worlds beyond, many worlds beyond the appearances. I mean, just take the simple example of a mirage in the desert or a rainbow in the sky. There's something beyond that appearance, right?
Yeah.
And those are just symbols. But the whole earth is like that. That we perceive, right?
Yeah.
I happened across the YouTube. I didn't really watch it, but some guy was talking about extending the human senses, right? To where we could see infrared and hear, ultrasound or other, things that we normally wouldn't be able to perceive. Usually some transducer on the scan or something.
Yeah, sometimes I do think about like those ideas where like so like in double slit, whenever there's an observer, then this wave function collapse and then rendering happens. So
right, and that whole wave function collapse thing is just a way of speaking, right?
Yeah,
it's just a model that happened to evolve because of the fantastic work done by Schrodinger and some other people describing the probabilities, which looks like a wave, right? And then there's people who actually believe there actually is a wave. All right, there's other people who believe that the wave function collapses, but I don't know how a wave of probability collapses, But that's just a way of speaking.
Yeah. So let's say if I'm not let's say in my right now I'm not aware of what is happening in the rest of the world. But let's say I go back to the news 1 hour later, or to figure out what is going on, then that is kind of like a collapse of the waveform. Like that is kind of rendering of the reality.
Yeah, you could say that. You could say that.
At that time.
Yeah, these are just languages used to describe what we can't describe at all.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's always just a tiny, tiny little slice. Mm-hmm. It can be very captivating, and it's designed to be captivating.
Mm-hmm. And there's always some uncertain or unexpected thing that happens. But for the most part of the world, things seem to be running on on an expected, consistent path.
Oh, I don't know about that. I mean, if you look at the Middle East, one day they were sitting there, having a grand old time writing poetry and philosophy and science and starting universities and all this and that. Mm-hmm. And the next day the Mongols show up. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. Did you know much about the Mongol invasions?
No.
They just came in and burned everything to the ground. Mm-hmm. Killed everybody. Mm-hmm. Or you're going along, you're living your life, everything seems fantastic, and then all of a sudden there's the Black Death, the plague. Mm-hmm. It kills 60% of the population. Mm-hmm. Or something like that in Europe, I think, or maybe more. Mm-hmm. So the world, we imagine that the world is predictable because when we were young, we put our heads down and focused on one thing, maybe school or something else. And we believed our parents, and at home things seemed to be pretty, more or less seem to be on an understandable trajectory. But then when you look at the world, man, it's full of surprises, right? Mm-hmm. Lots of surprises. Yeah. So, I mean, I put the Mongol invasion and the Black Death, those are dramatic examples, but it was pretty dramatic if you were there. Mm-hmm.
I mean, even in my lifetime, just the COVID thing that happened in 2020, that was also very unexpected thing that happened suddenly.
Yeah, seeing it, brother. Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. We've all been through quite a bit in the last, 10 years, something like that. Mm-hmm.
So it seems
Remember when you thought that it was going to go back to normal?
Yeah.
What's that mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the world seems consistent unless something shows up.
And something always shows up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Maybe not in a very short time period, but overall, something shows up.
Yeah. I mean, we fantasize about living someplace where there's nothing, no surprises, but it doesn't really exist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Cool. I have other questions from so I'm reading Tales of the Dervishes again.
Oh, good. You'll find that it bears repeated reading, and a lot of times it's impossible to get it the first time, right? Mm-hmm. You have to. Yeah. It takes multiple readings as you grow older and you begin to understand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I was reading this story, The Blind Ones and the Matter of the Elephant. This is
very important one.
Yeah, this is basically like a I think a city has everyone, all the blind people. Then they go and touch different parts of the elephant, and then they come back and tell, oh, this is how elephant is and this is how elephant is.
Right. Do you have the story right there?
Yeah, I have the story here. Yeah.
Why don't you read it? I mean, it's a simple story, but it's an important one.
Okay.
It's a very important one, and it's. I remember reading it as a child, and thinking, oh, well, that's interesting, somewhat or whatever. But when you really begin to see the world accurately, then this story has more and more meaning. And so, at the risk of boring some people, please read it, and I challenge people to apply this to themselves.
Mhm.
and the world. So go ahead, read it.
Yeah. So the story is The Blind Ones and the Matter of the Elephant. And the story says, beyond Gore there was a city. All its inhabitants were blind. A king with his entourage arrived nearby. He brought his army and camped in the desert. He had a mighty elephant, which he used in attack and to increase the people's awe. The populace became anxious to see the elephant, and some sightless from among this blind community ran like fools to find it. As they did not even know the form or shape of the elephant, they groped sightlessly, gathering information by touching some part of it. Each thought that he knew something, because he could feel a part. When they returned to their fellow citizens, eager groups clustered around them. Each of these was anxious, misguidedly, to learn the truth from those who were themselves astray. They asked about the form, the shape of the elephant, and listened to all that they were told. The man whose hand had reached a ear was asked about the elephant's nature. He said, "It is a large, rough thing, wide and broad like a rug." And the one who had felt the trunk said, "I have the real facts about it. It is like a straight and hollow pipe, awful and destructive." The one who had felt its feet and legs said, "It is mighty and firm like a pillar." Each had felt one part out of many. Each had perceived it wrongly. No mind knew all. Knowledge is not the companion of the blind. All imagined something, something incorrect. The created is not informed about divinity. There is no way in the science by means of the ordinary intellect.
The created is what now?
The created is not informed about divinity.
The created is not informed about divinity. Go on.
There is no way in this science by means of the ordinary intellect.
Okay, good. So even me, I've probably read that story 6 times or more. And this is the first time I'm focusing on the fact that a king with hostile intent was bringing in an elephant to shock and awe, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, for me right now, well, my first thought was like, this is like the media, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're presenting, whatever piece of the elephant they've happened to touch,
Mm-hmm.
also from their perspective, and even without malfeasance or bias or anything like that, there's no way they could present anything remotely resembling the truth. And so that's a hard pill to swallow. But as you get older in life, and you start to realize, wait a minute, things are not at all as I imagined. I've had that experience myself. Mm-hmm. This story becomes more and more useful, right? Mm-hmm. So I think it's a good story that way because it illustrates how you can read it on the surface, and you do the first time. Mm-hmm. It's mildly amusing a bit, but then as you go on in life, you begin to say, oh my God, this applies to everything at all times, everywhere. Mm-hmm. And then it becomes much more powerful. Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for reading that. And which book is that in?
This is Tales of the Dervishes.
Oh, Tales of the Dervishes, yeah. I recommend this to anybody, lay people even, people who aren't particularly even interested in truth or philosophy or theology or mysticism or just, I would recommend it to everybody, including mathematicians. Tales of the Dervishes, teaching stories from the last, 1,000 years? Teaching stories of the Sufi masters for the last 1,000 years. Is that correct? Is that the title?
It says Teaching Stories of the Sufi Master. Yeah, correct. That's correct. All
right, so 1,000 years worth of, and these things survive for a reason. So thank you. Mm-hmm. That's good. And the book is by Idris Shah. It's easily available. It's available in paperback, and it's a real treasure. It's not part of the teaching corpus per se, but it's a nice collection of teaching stories that anybody can get into. Great, thank you.
I had a question about the last couple of sentences. So I
Okay.
So I get that part, that there is no way in the science by means of the ordinary intellect. So that part I can understand, that until mind is prepared in a certain way, uh, and like a work has been done, yeah, it's with ordinary just intellect, it's gonna be really hard to to get to get the teachings or get somewhere.
Right, but thankfully, we don't just have ordinary intellect.
Mm-hmm.
We have a direct line to inspiration, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we're directly connected to the substrate.
So I was thinking if you can expand on how, let's say, how someone new, like let's say how someone with just like usual, like ordinary intellect, what they can do to expand and like maybe get to that direct line of, or like how to expand their mind so that they are able to get somewhere in this.
Well, the masters at teaching this, I mean, at scale, would be the Buddhists in the 2nd century, right? And the use of sutra that is both educational and mind expanding, and conditioning of the substrate such that your mind is large enough
Mm-hmm.
to accept the some of the insights that are coming.
Mm-hmm.
In addition to that, you can use the Sufi text to disabuse yourself of the most common, cognitive errors and biases that everybody has that they have to get rid of in order if they're going to see straight. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, there's the Taoist approach, which is to set one's sight on aligning with the way, right? The great way of understanding and accord with the natural and supernal order of things. And then we have the great religions have mystical traditions, and that's not by accident. Mm-hmm. So there's the Christianity, the Christian approach, or a Muslim approach. I think the most important thing is to have the pure desire and intent, and the dedication of that intent towards that goal is something that I don't think anybody can skip over. And so a lot of it has to do with resolve, and then the practice of removing the obstacles. And invariably, the obstacles are due to impatience, selfishness, laziness, lack of information, and so on and so forth. The opposite of the 6 paramitas that we talk about all the time. Mm-hmm. And egotism and things like that. So it's not a matter of finding something that's lost. It's a matter of removing the things that keep you from seeing. Mm-hmm. And the usual human, what we call the human vices, unfortunately, are exactly those things that tend to get in the way. Mm-hmm. But not in a stupid. It's not a stupid thing. It's subtle, right? This is not Sunday school. This is advanced stuff. Mm-hmm. And so, getting rid of obstacles, unexamined assumptions, for example, mm-hmm. hidden unexamined assumptions, for example, are killer in this work. And so the Sufis and the Buddhists both help with this quite a bit. Mm-hmm. And then the sincerity and the dedication that one needs is very much like the dedication and sincerity of a philosopher or a scientist or an artist, a musician. I mean, you have to want it. Mm-hmm. Deeply to your bones, to your bone marrow. But then knock and it'll be open to you. Mm-hmm. There is no. The truth is always there. The only thing that keeps us from seeing it is our greedy little selfish minds and the assumptions we make. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, it is true that the logical understanding of it is not the thing itself, right? Mm-hmm. But one can use logic and reason and science and things like this to get closer, mm-hmm. and then it's a not as big a jump. Mm-hmm. But the world is not as it appears. Mm-hmm. It's much more than that. Mm-hmm. Okay, sir.
Yeah. Another thing I noticed, so like I have like told a few people to read these books. I've also like read some of the stories to some people depending on the situation they were in. But
Good luck.
Yeah, but what I noticed was there was no inspirational change in other people because they were because I don't know. It's like I thought that okay, maybe I lack the capacity to teach or inspire people. That is what is happening.
Well, there may be some of that, or you may be as the story. There was a whole city of the blind, right? Mm-hmm. If you're in the city of the blind and you go and show them a gorgeous painting by Velázquez or Picasso or something, mm-hmm. You're not going to get much response. Mm-hmm. And see, that's another thing I missed from that story. The whole city was blind. Mm-hmm. So these kind of details of those little stories, they add up later on. Yeah. And you go, wow, these guys are sophisticated. They are.
Yeah. So after a point of time, I basically pretty much gave up that right now it's not in my capacity to like influence people. So I gave up on that.
Well, you can influence people without you knowing or they knowing. Mm-hmm. I mean, and that's actually one of the best ways to influence people.
Yeah, I mean, I do tell the basic stuff. Like, let's say if someone is going through anxiety, then I just tell them like the basic just awareness or meditation stuff, and that helps them a little.
Sure, if they're suffering, they're more amenable to listening.
Yeah. But
have them separate their mind, separate themselves from their mind, right? Mm-hmm. Say, hey, the part of you that's having these anxious thoughts mm-hmm. is not the part of you that's observing these anxious thoughts. Mm-hmm. You know, these are two distinct elements.
Yeah.
One is consciousness, the other one's content. And that can help, you know, some people sometime, yeah. Mm-hmm. Because people get lost and they think that they are their mind. Mm-hmm. But they're not their mind. They're something much, much faster than that. Mm-hmm. Faster, VASTER.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the other line that was in this, which was the creator is not informed about divinity.
Right.
This one.
The created, right?
Yeah, the created, yeah.
Yeah, see, the part of you that's going to know divinity is not created and won't be destroyed. It's not only not created, it's not in time. Mm-hmm. So there's another jewel they just drop into the story. The created, you know, that which is created cannot know that which is not created. It wouldn't make any sense. That which is compounded, mm-hmm. or that which is compounded will not know that which is not compounded. Mm-hmm. This is where the flower ornament comes in very, very handy. And you know, I spent quite a bit of time with that book, and I still continue to be amazed by it, right? Mm-hmm. And, you know, of course, sometimes it feels, because especially we like to get things done, get them over with, so on and so forth, move along, let's go, mm-hmm. that kind of thing. And the flower ornament resists that, right? It repeats over and over and over with slight variations. Mm-hmm. And then it moves into another realm, and then back and forth, and it's fractal and it's holographic. And it really does have an impact on the mind. There's no other way to get the material than just to do it, right? Mm-hmm. To chant or listen to or read that sutra. Mm-hmm. But in so doing, it does prepare your mind subtly, slowly. You know, it's very sophisticated. Mm-hmm. And you know, the worlds upon worlds, and the just to I think you asked, well, how could the compounded, or how could the created approach the uncreated? Well, this is one of the very best ways, in my opinion, is that Second Century Sutra. It's there, it's available, it's translated into English, and my God, that thing is amazing. Now, you could also read the Sufi books as a preparation. The education, the books they prepared for students in the last century. Or you could go the path of devotion in Christianity, I suppose. But the adjunctive stuff, you probably need to read the mystics as well. Meister Eckhart, among others. I mean, the main thing is to have the desire and the intent and the ambition in a pure form in your heart, in your spirit. That's the main thing, to be undivided. So I hope that helps with the questions.
Yeah.
We're going to have to stop. Do you have a last question or anything?
Yeah, I have one last question maybe then. So,
All right.
So there's this story about like Sultan who became an exile. So it's a long story. I'll just like tell the summary. So basically, there was
Wait a minute, slow down. What's the story about what?
The story is the Sultan who became an exile.
Okay, the Sultan who became an exile. Okay.
Yeah. So this is basically. So I think this was about. So someone, I think Sultan Sultan was questioning how Prophet Muhammad had his experience of like where he was like taken up from his bed into celestial spheres. He talked to God and came back.
Celestial spheres, right?
Yeah, celestial spheres. Yeah. So
is this when he's in bed and they knock over a pitcher? How long is the story?
So the story is three pages long.
All right, but this is the episode where well, here, you tell the audience what it says.
Yeah, so basically it was about like a sultan who was being told about like the night journey of the Prophet Muhammad, that he was taken from his bed up into celestial spheres, and he saw paradise and hell, conferred with God 90,000 times, had many other experiences, and then was returned to his room while his bed was yet warm. So the Sultan, he questioned that how is that possible? So a Sufi teacher, he came in and he told him that, okay, I'll show you how it's possible. So he filled a pot with water, and he dipped Sultan's head into that pot, and then Sultan was miraculously transported, or he thought he was transported to a beach, and then he basically spent 7 years of his life there living in exile, and then suddenly he was transported back to his palace with his head dipped in the head, and it was only a moment that has passed.
Right.
So that's how he tried to show him that these kind of things are possible. But then in the end, they said it is not whether a thing has happened or not which is the important element. It is possible for anything to happen. What is, however, important is the significance of the happening. In your case, like in Sultan's case, there was no significance because he didn't change. In the case of the Prophet, there was significance in the happening. So they didn't go into whether whatever is being talked about Prophet was true or not, but what they said that there was significance of that.
Right.
In Prophet's life.
Because he understood. So the Sultan did not understand. He may have thought it was a party trick or something, I don't know. But he didn't understand the relativity of time. He didn't understand that what we call time in this world endurance, a day and a night in this world endurance is 7 years in another world. Right? This is all gone over in great detail in the flower ornament, in the Avatamsaka Sutra. But yeah, this is also in the Quran, I believe, or some reference to it is. And so in the case of Muhammad, peace be upon him, there was understanding, right? So there's significance. But if there's not understanding, then people think, well, that was some kind of magic trick,
Yeah. But then shouldn't there be like an element of truth also to it? So like, for example,
there's nothing but truth. There's always truth, but human understanding may or may not have, or human perception may have nothing to do with it, with the truth.
So, like, if someone had an experience through, let's say, in a dream, or through hallucination, or let's say through like some divine experience, there should be a difference in these three scenarios, right? Like, one is truth, the other are more like mental fabrications.
But see, the variable that you're changing around is not the important variable. The question is, what was understood, what was learned.
So if I learn something, let's say from my dream, how would I know whether that's even accurate? Because a lot of things can happen in my dream, and
it's not whether the detail in your dream is accurate. It's what level of understanding is there. So the man who described the elephant as a flat, broad ear, right, or the one who described it as a tree trunk, or the one who described the trunk, the nose, or the nose, the trunk of the elephant, or someone who had felt the tail. They all were accurate, but none of them understood. And so the same thing with a dream. It can be as accurate as you want, but if you don't understand it, I mean, what difference does that make? It's of no significance. You can see a miracle, but if you think it's a party trick, then it's a party trick. There's no significance. And people walk right by miracles every day because their minds are shut off. I mean, this earth is itself a miracle. I mean, good God, what do you want? I mean, we have no idea where it came from, where it's going. The same thing's true for the cosmos. We got this thing. We don't know where the center is. We don't know where the outside is. We're not located in any place that we can discern. And so, I mean, what do people need as a sign that there's things way beyond us in our silly little models? Like a simulation, computer simulation or something like that.
I think maybe.
Okay, sir.
Yeah, I think that maybe my error is always like trying to like see, okay, what is like the absolute truth, and only learn from that, but not from others, because they
very,
don't.
very, very, very good. Excellent. This universe is an abode of truth, and its function is to teach us. It's to get rid of the ignorance that causes the suffering, and to get rid of the ignorance that ignites us, right? But so it's teaching at all times. All things are teaching at all times. It's a matter of understanding, right? But if you're the city of the blind and you're also blind, that's going to be tough.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay, sir.
Okay.
Take good care, man.
You too. Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.